Okay, so we're reading Leviticus 24:10 through 14. One day, a man who had an Israelite mother and an Egyptian father got into a fight with one of the Israelite men. During the fight, this son of an Israelite woman blasphemed the Lord's name. So the man was brought to Moses for judgment. His mother's name was Shelomith. She was the daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan. They put the man in custody until the Lord's will in the matter should become clear. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Take the blasphemer outside the camp and tell all those who heard him to lay their hands on his head. Then let the entire community stone him to death." After Moses gave all these instructions to the Israelites, they led the blasphemer outside the camp and stoned him to death, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Okay, so we're gonna, number 3 says, still others would fall because they were rebellious toward God. We will look at some of these under our next point. So Roman numeral 2, what are some of the creative ways that people perished in the wilderness? I think that's like an odd question. Creative ways to die. The following are examples of some notable incidents that occurred as one generation waited for another generation to perish. A, the death of a Sabbath breaker. This is from Numbers 15:32 to 36. Now, while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation. They put him under guard because it had not been explained what should be done to him. Then the Lord said to Moses, "The man must surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp." So as the Lord commanded Moses, all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died. Then the commentary shares that this might seem a little picky on God's part, but he has a lot of people that have to go. Most likely, this man was killed for the reason given in previous verses, Numbers 15:30 through 31, which say, "But the person who does anything presumptuously, whether he is native born or a stranger, that one brings reproach on the Lord, and he shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of the Lord and has broken his commandment. That person shall be completely cut off. His guilt shall be upon him." Verse 31 in the New Living Translation says, "Since they have treated the Lord's word with contempt and deliberately disobeyed his commands, they must be completely cut off and suffer the consequences of their guilt." Okay, so now we're going to read B, which is another creative way that people were perishing. It was the rebellion of Korah and company. So let's just go, that was your blank, Korah. So number 1, Korah gathered 250 men, some of whom were Levites, to confront Moses about his leadership. Number 2, Moses confronted these men with humility, from Numbers 16:4 through 5. A, in this confrontation, Moses challenged them to come up and present themselves before the Lord with their censers. Numbers 16:5 through 7. B, in this confrontation, he encouraged them to allow the Lord to choose between them. Numbers 16:7. In this confrontation, Moses reminded them of the privilege that was already theirs by functioning in priestly service. 3, those who were with Korah stubbornly refused to come up. I think your notes now don't have a 4 and they just go to 5. So I'll start saying the numbers based on your notes now. So I just said 3, but I'm going to skip to 5 because I think that's what your notes do. 5, Moses became angry and asked God to side with him. 6, eventually Korah and his company presented themselves with their censers before the Lord. 7, when they were all assembled, the Lord came down in a manifested way. 8, God threatened to consume the whole congregation in judgment. 9, Moses and Aaron interceded for the people. 10, Moses was told to announce to the congregation to separate themselves from the rebels, their families, and all that they possessed. 11, Moses issued the ultimate challenge to the 5 principal leaders. So this was his challenge in Numbers 16:28-30. Yeah. And Moses said, "By this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own will. If these men die naturally, like all men, or if they are visited by the common fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates a new thing, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the pit, then you will understand that these men have rejected the Lord." 12. God judged the rebels by opening up the earth and swallowing them up. That is in Numbers 16:31-34. It says, "Now it came to pass, as he finished speaking all these words, that the ground split apart under them, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, with all their households and all the men with Korah and all their goods." Whoa, so intense. 13. God judged the remaining 250 who were offering incense by consuming them with fire. 14. God further judged the people who had reacted to and complained about God's judgment on Korah and his company. In this case, some 14,700 died before the plague was turned back by the intercession of Moses and Aaron. C. Another rebellion against Moses. I'll read you this, Numbers 21, 4-9. Then they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the soul of the people became very discouraged on the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. "Why have you brought us up to Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and our soul loathes this worthless bread." So the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, "We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he take these serpents away from us." So Moses prayed for the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and it shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live." So Moses made a bronze serpent and put it on a pole. And so it was, if a serpent had bitten anyone, when he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. Number 1, the Israelites complained about the conditions. Your blank is conditions in the wilderness. They hated the manna. Number 2, God sent poisonous snakes among the people, and many died. Number 3, Moses once again interceded for the people. Number 4, God provided a remedy for the snake bite, which was that bronze serpent lifted up on a pole that he created. Number 5, this remedy for the snake bite speaks of God's remedy for the snake bite of sin. Jesus lifted up on a cross. Wow, I love that. I love how God always is connecting the Old Testament and the New Testament. It says in John 3:14-15, "And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life." Wow, I love that connection that God made. So even back in the Old Testament times, God was giving them remedies for the situations that they were going through, just as God gave us Jesus for the remedy of sin, that we were separated from God. So God gave us Jesus just in the same way. I love how they drew that comparison. Evidently, they kept this bronze serpent and brought it into the promised land as a reminder of God's deliverance. However, eventually it became a source of idolatry, and they actually had to destroy it. And if you wanted to read about that, it's in 2 Kings 18:3-4. D, so this is the last creative way that people were perishing in the wilderness: the sin of adultery and idolatry. So this is a long little passage, but I'm going to read it to you, and then we're actually headed toward the end. So this is Numbers 25:1-13. Here we go. While the Israelites were camped at Acacia, some of the men defiled themselves by sleeping with the local Moabite women. These women invited them to attend sacrifices to their gods, and soon the Israelites were feasting with them and worshiping the gods of Moab. Before long, Israel was joining in the worship of Baal of Peor, causing the Lord's anger to blaze against his people. The Lord issued the following command to Moses: "Seize all the ringleaders and execute them before the Lord in broad daylight, so his fierce anger will turn away from the people of Israel." So Moses ordered Israel's judges to execute everyone who had joined in worshiping Baal of Peor. Just then, one of the Israelite men brought a Midianite woman into the camp right before the eyes of Moses and all the people, as they were weeping at the entrance of the tabernacle. When Phinehas, son of Eleazar and grandson of Aaron, the priest, saw this, he jumped up and left the assembly. Then he took a spear 8 and rushed after the man into his tent. Phinehas thrust the spear all the way through the man's body and into the woman's stomach. So the plague against the Israelites was stopped. 9, but not before 24,000 people had died. Verse 10, Then the Lord said to Moses, "Phinehas, son of Eleazar and grandson of Aaron, the priest, has turned my anger away from the Israelites by displaying passionate zeal among them on my behalf. So I have stopped destroying all Israel as I intended to do in my anger. So tell him that I am making my special covenant of peace with him. In this covenant, he and his descendants will be priests for all time, because he was zealous for his God and made atonement for the people of Israel." So this is one of the last recorded incidents of mass death in the wilderness journey. A total of 24,000 died in this incident that we just read. So we're actually getting closer to the accomplishment of the goal in preparation for entry into this promised land. At this point, the 40 years trek in the wilderness, 40 years, same difference. The 40-year trek in the wilderness is coming to an end. So they're almost there. So you're going to actually learn about how Moses died in your last session. Roman numeral 3. What was life like during those years in the wilderness? Life was very difficult. A, it was difficult because the plan of God was on hold. Without a vision, people become discouraged. That's in Proverbs 29:18. B, it was very difficult because it involved constant moving. According to Numbers 33, the children of Israel moved and camped about 42 times in those years. As soon as they got settled in one place, they had to pick up their whims of the cloud and move to another campground. Sorry, let me read that again. As soon as they got settled in one place, they had to pick up at the whims of the cloud and move to another campground. C, it was very difficult because everyone was waiting for a generation to die off. So it just makes a note that it must have been very eerie to be the last remaining members of the old generation, that everyone, your blank is that everyone, was watching to see if they would die.